This video around the Southbound interactive API. So this API is around the management of services and accesses in the system. Obviously, this was not really spec'd originally back last year when we spoke about this bit of work, but it does make sense for us to enable people to push data directly to us because it does drastically simplify our Southbound integration. Pushing orders and tickets out is actually simple enough. It was the pulling services and accesses in that was going to be the harder piece of it. So actually, if we can convince people to push the data to us, then this is going to be great. So as I say, the API is actually pretty blimmin' simple. So beyond a little bit of testing and any changes we need to make when we put in front of real customers, this is kind of good to go. There wasn't much point kind of mocking or faking any of this. So this interactive stuff that I'm going to show you now, we're going to be saving and calling back real data, and that data could realistically power a lot of kind of the feasibility checkers and things like that in the live system. Obviously, now with the interactive API on the Southbound side, I've had to open up the ability for network operators to access and generate API keys because they're no longer just for the northbound. But it all uses exactly the same system. It's exactly the same bit of UI. I've just given network operators, admins and developers the same permissions as service providers so they can now access their API keys, which is essentially all that allows us just to tie their organization to the request so that when they go, hey, here's a new service or here's some accesses, we know which one to associate it to. You'll see I've sort of duplicated the auth requests at the top here. These auth requests are exactly the same as the ones we looked at in the provider API. I've literally just copied and pasted the documentation in here. There's no changes in terms of how it's used, so I'm not going to run through it in any detail in this video. Just as a quick reminder, to get the API keys, you can get those from the portal. And obviously I'm in as a super admin, but there would be a link on the dashboard now for network operators to do this, and it would essentially bring them in to this screen here where they could get the API keys, copy those in, and those go in the headers exactly like I showed you previously. So X client ID, X client secret. I've already got those set up here in Insomnia, so I'm not going to bother with that. So we'll just pull up the documentations and get cracking. So obviously first thing we'll do is we will just authenticate because we need a session to do all of this. So we're logged in. We're logged in as the Bravo dummy company I set up. So we'll just work down in order. So just before we add a service, we'll have a look and see if there's anything in there. And this is the bit I said there's some manual configuration that needs adding for each network operator that wants to do this. So in future, we need there's a reasonable amount of config that goes into the like order and ticket southbound calls. So they need to tell us like base URLs and any headers or authentication protocols and things. And to do that, what I've done is I've created the concept of networks being decoupled from organizations. So you can have like a one-to-one linking, or you can have networks that live in the system without kind of users and logins and organizations. But to use this bit of the Southbound API, we need to manually create that association at the moment in the database table between the organization that we're making the requests as and an organizer and a network object. This will all be done through the UI really simply in a couple of clicks shortly, but for now I just need to add a record. So you see here I'm creating Bravo network in the networks table, and I'm literally just linking it to the organization ID here, which is the same as the Bravo one. So just link that in now. That should all link up, hopefully. Just rerun that query, make sure that comes back. Yep, so that's all linked up. Bro, so we don't need that screen again. So that's away. So now we should be able to send this request. Nope, that didn't work. Why did that not work? We didn't link it to the organization correctly. Apologies, I just need to get the organization ID for that network. And in here, we can just edit this one. Link that up. Apply. Okay. Cool, right, now that should work. Beautiful. So that organization, as we've literally just created the network association, doesn't have any services, so we can go ahead and add some. So I've pre-populated a little list here of services, so we can go ahead and fire those in. This array could be 1, it could be 100, it shouldn't matter unless they're spamming 10,000 services in one go. this should take anything they throw at it. It does do some basic validation, which we'll come on into a second, and it will dedupe them. So if I kind of create 2 records here with exactly the same ID, even with different names, it will, if there's 2 identical IDs, it's going to deduplicate them for me. So I'll send that across, and you'll see I get back 3 because it's kind of gone, hey, you can't have the IDs. It doesn't fail, it just takes them out. What it will do though is now I've created them. If I go to the list endpoint, it should pull those back. Brilliant. There we go. There's our services. If I now try and create them with the same IDs, I'll get hey, these service IDs already exist. You can't do that. Those service IDs are unique to the network adding them. So if there were for some very unlikely chance that the ID used between network 1, network 2, network 3, there was overlap, it wouldn't matter. They're unique within the context of the network, not unique within the context of the system. So, we've kind of got all of this built in. So what this has now done is created a record of this service. It's linked it to the ID that the network provided. It's given it a unique ID in our system, so we've got a separate reference from it that is unique that we can use and pass around easily. And it's also linked it back to the network in the first place. So that's that. We can now list them back. We could edit it. So we've got B8 in our list here. So let me just collapse this up a bit. So B8 is one of these. I can't remember which. And we can send the edit, and we should get back a nice response saying, hey, that's all been done. And here's the new one. And when we come back to the list, we should see that service has been edited. So you see here, oh yeah, a lovely edited service. Great. And now we can also suspend it. So the other bit in all of this is what we don't want them deleting services, because it will link to orders and things like that. So if they need to change a service drastically or retire it, they can tell us it's terminated, but they can't delete it from the system fully. I'll just check which one I'm going to deactivate. B7. Okay, B7, fine. So go ahead and suspend that one, and it will suspend it in the system, which will mark it as terminated, which is one of our predefined statuses, which means that then when we pull back any requests around accesses, it will ignore this service entirely. So that's adding services. As you see, it's really simple, but it's got all the validation in there around, duplication and making sure things are unique and editing things correctly. If you try and edit a service that doesn't exist, for example, if we set this to some random character, it's going to go, hey, 404, no active services. So you've kind of got the whole, and that one, obviously I deactivated this service, so that's also giving a 404 now. So that's all sort of working. What I will just do is manually in the database revert that, because I think some of my later examples do rely on this service being active. So just bear with 1 second. Terminated. We'll set that back to active. Cool. Only because I think I've set some of the data up in the next request to rely on that service. So I will just undo that action. Okay, and now the next one is actually adding the accesses, UPRNs, that are accessible or this service is applied to. So this is this bit of the API. So far we've looked at adding a service, listing the service, suspending it, and also editing it. Now what we can do is link a set of UPRNs to a service. There's a couple of ways I've set this up, because there seemed, from a kind of pragmatic approach, a couple of ways people might want to do this. I thought the probably primary way would be for people to add a list of UPRNs to an individual service. So, hey, here's 30,000 UPRNs that this service is now available at. So you post it to access service ID and you give it a whole heap of UPRN data. I've said in the documentation this could be 100,000 or 50 megabytes body size, depending which is bigger. Theoretically, it could probably be more. I haven't tested quite what those limits are, so that number might change. But for now, I'm saying that, hey, if you can do 100, you could probably get away with 50 to 100,000 in one request. So this is just a list of UPRNs. You'll see I've deliberately chucked some duplicates in here. That's just to show again that the deduping logic's in there. Just check what service I'm adding this to. So think I'm adding it to B9. So what we'll just do is list anything by service on B9, which is what I've done. So you'll see that I've got no UPRN data against B9. So what I'll now go and do is I will add those to the service. So I'm adding, I think I'm adding 7, but actually the last one here is a duplication. So send that across. And that's added them correctly. Because this could be a really big body, I'm not going to return all of them back. I'm just going to say, hey, I've done it. If some of these already exist, so I could send this again and again and again and again, it's going to swallow duplicate conflicts. So the way I handle this in the back end is I create a unique broadband hub reference number, which is essentially a composite of the network ID, the service ID, and the UPRN, and I can ensure uniqueness against that. And if I see something that already exists, i.e. I've linked a UPRN to a service, I just ignore the fact that someone's trying to create another one, because there is nothing stateful around that linkage. So I can just safely ignore that someone's tried to create it again and swallow the error rather than showing it. So if I go ahead and now list by this service, you should see now I get back my 6 records as expected, which is great. I figure this is probably how most people will add it, but then I did think that there was another use case around people wanting to add services to a UPRN directly, so one at a time. Now, where I thought this could be useful, and I'm not expecting this to be widely used, but if people have got a very small number of accesses they're adding, they may prefer to do one at a time and go, hey, this one can have these services, this one can do that one, because then they could kind of handle any errors from our side cleaner, I guess, or it's probably more efficient for them in their records just to go, hey, I want to put all these services against this one UPRN, if that's how they're set up. As I say, I don't think this is going to be the common use case, but let's have a see and see what people come up with. Again, this will ignore any services that don't exist. So if a service doesn't exist, it just drops it from this list. It's not going to say, hey, this service isn't there. It's just going to go, well, you're an idiot, and won't let you do it. We'll let you do it, but it's not going to save any records. Again, I think I've set this back to that 815 UPRN, so I'll go ahead and post this. And again, that just gives a simple string message. So I should now be able to go to that UPRN, which I just checked 15, and I should now get back all of the hydrated services that I've added. So that should have picked up the one I added initially in the add to service, and then the other ones I've added since. So again, on that same sort of broadband hub unique reference number that I've given these linkages, it will have seen that some of the services I was trying to add to that UPRN also existed, and just ignored them and swallowed the error. So theoretically, I keep spamming this exact same request through, and it's not going to get cross at me. It's not going to create hundreds of duplicate records or anything like that. It's going to keep it nice and succinct and targeted. So that's it all working, and that's it, kind of pulling the data back and doing everything like that. What I've done for now in terms of the feasibility endpoints, if I just log in as someone else, what I've had to do just to ensure that we don't surface anyone's testing data is I've hard coded the dummy data ID. So when you do feasibilities, it will only pull from those first 6 dummy networks I showed here. So the ones from Carl's Designs, it will only get services from these. So anything anyone adds won't come back on feasibility. That is a deliberate safeguard just to prevent us accidentally kind of leaking anyone's test data or anything like that. So that's kind of deliberately hard coded into the system at the moment. Later down the line, there'd be config and go, hey, this person can see these ones and this one. We haven't obviously spec'd any of that, so we will need to look at that as the next phase of work. But if I log in as alpha, and apparently I can't log in as alpha, I can't remember who the users are on here. Whoever that is, if I then do the feasibility, I'm not going to get results anyway. It's the point. I think if I do system admin, oh no, system admin can't do it either. It's because the API keys are. I've just realised why. It's the API keys in the header are wrong for that account, so I won't be able to get in as them. So yeah, never mind. That's too slow to show. Cool. I think that's everything. But shout out if you've got any questions. And yeah, I will chat to you soon. Cheers, mate. Bye.